All right, the time has come to start putting the front cover on. We're gonna get this thing on there, bolted up, torqued down, because this sealant bead, this huge sealant bead we're gonna apply to this thing, is gonna take a while to cure before we can fire the engine. Now, speaking of the engine, I still like to, after all these years, go through everything we did on the front end here, timing and torquing and all that stuff, just to make sure it's all good to go before we just slap the front cover on there, okay? So I'll go through and make sure that the bolts did get torqued an additional 180. Good to go. Make sure our marks for timing are good to go. All that good stuff. And then I'll follow down, make sure the chain is tracking and aligning with the sprockets there. Now down here, if you did put rags down in there like I did, make sure you pull them out. And of course, pull your crankshaft bolt off so we can slip the front cover over that without ruining the crank seal. Now you see this over here, all this oil coming down here? Yeah, that's just from the vehicle sitting. Well, look where it's starting at. It's coming from this pocket right here. Now this T-joint, that line between the head and the block right there, where it meets is the most common leak point on these engines. And like I said, Ford is still trying to perfect the sealant to be able to handle the temperatures of this engine. So yeah, we need to clean that up very, very well. Maybe even blow out some of the groove there with some compressed air. Clean it again. Oh yeah, clean it again. And then before you put the front cover on, we're gonna clean it again. And that goes for the rest of the front cover sealing surface on here. And this side right here, same thing as the other major T-joint that leaks on these big time. There is another T-joint right here, you see it right there? Those two right there where the head meets the block and all that. Those don't leak so often, but you can see why these ones do. They're just getting saturated and pulled up with oil all the time. So let's make it clean and torque it down and seal it up right. Okay, there's one last step I forgot we have to do on the front cover here. You want to install a new radius seal, and that seal I'm talking about looks a little something like this. It's probably stuck on the engine side with the pipe that comes out through the front of the engine. So you want to get the old one off and then get your new one and press it in from the back side of the front cover here. So it looks like this, it goes in just like this. And you just want to use a press piece or a piece of metal that is wider than this opening right here. That way when you tap it through, tap, 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 and it bottoms out in the back side of the cover, the back side of the seal is also flushed out all the way around and good to go. Now I also put a little bit of lubricant on the inside of the seal here, so when you push on the front cover and we're bolting it up, that tube will just slide right on through here and it won't disturb the positioning of the seal. All right, are you ready for it? Make sure you're ready, because next we're installing that sealant bead all the way around here. We need to get it on the engine and torque down pretty darn quick. All right, put on your game face, because this is where it gets crazy. You need to make sure you have all your bolts for the front cover ready to go. Make sure they're all here, because there's, what, 22 of them, and they're different sizes. So let's go over the sizes real quick, and then I'll go over another trick up in the engine compartment so it's nice and clear for putting this thing on. Nice and straight. You don't want to disturb the sealant when we're going back on. Now, all these bolts are the same on the outside here. So you'll follow them all the way down and over, okay? And they're all the same length, okay? Up here, these four are the same length. They're much longer, you can see that, okay? That's where those go. And then there's a very small 8mm head bolt right here. So that's where that one goes. And the last oddball is right here under that seal. That's the big boy in the center that holds it all together. Now that you have all these bolts ready to clean, your seals are ready, we can apply the sealant around the outside. I'll show you that here in a second, how it looks in the end. But going back together, there's a lot of stages of the torque sequence. Look at this. It's nuts. Like I said, get your game face on. This is very important. Now, up in the engine compartment here, let's look. Of course, all our sealing surfaces are ultra clean and ready to go. Everything in front of the cover is ready to go, so you can just plop it right on there nice, straight, and true. What I do is this hose right here, we didn't take off earlier because it's just too many connections. It's like hanging over here. Well, it's in our way and you're going to be fighting it. You're going to need 2 hands to put the cover on right. What I do is put a long breaker bar down in there, it's not going to damage it, and go over here and just kind of lay it against there. And it'll hold the hose out of the way while we're putting the cover on. So we can just put it on nice and straight. Let's apply the sealant. All right, we need to make this quick. Here is how the sealant should look. So you'll make a nice bead like this. You're gonna go on the inside of the holes. Inside of the holes, all the way down. Okay, and all the way around. Nice continuous bead. Do not smear it. It will smear and spread out on its own once you torque it down. Don't forget this bolt hole and this one. Now there's one extra thing that I do. I will put sealant at each one of these T-joints also on the block side though. Okay, so there, where the pan meets down there, pan meets, and then of course where the head meets over here. So, once the sealant's applied, we can start with that torquing sequence. Don't worry about the torque sequence on the front cover. There'll be links to these documents down below in the video description so you guys can print them out and follow along on your engine. It's much, much easier that way. Now, once the front cover is torqued down, it's drying, we can go ahead and reinstall our intake VCT solenoids and torque the bolt down to 89 inch-pounds. Also, you can remove your alignment plates from the camshafts, both sides. And then we can also install our oil feed tubes right here back to the cam caps. Okay, we're going to torque these down to 71 inch-pounds and then an additional 45 degrees, both sides. The one extra step I do is I clean up this transfer tube for the coolant that goes to the back crossover back there, and I'll change the O-rings on also just to make sure there's no leaks upon reassembly here. So it just simply pulls out and then it pushes back in. So let's make sure it's centered in there. Give it a little wiggle. Make sure you lubricate the O-rings with engine coolant, and it'll go in just like that. All right, next you want to install your valve cover. So we seal up the engine before we drop something down in there, get it dirty. Get it sealed, let the sealant dry while we're working on the rest of the front cover area here. Now the only critical part of this is that this joint right here, this T-joint on both sides, you see it right there, same thing here and same thing here. You want to apply engine seal, a small glob of it there, and then you can put the valve covers on and torque them down. Again, I'll have torque specs in the sequence listed down below. Now, once the valve covers are torqued down in place, ready to go, we can start building on top of them. So I go after the harness. I'll get the harness laid back onto the valve covers, start connecting all our connectors, putting the coils in, connecting them up, and doing the push fasteners all the way around so you can lay the harness back into place and get it ready to go. Same thing on this side. The next thing I do is install the high pressure pumps so we can seal up the engine once and for all. But in order to do that, we need to turn the crankshaft so the cam lobe is on bottom dead center, or the fat portion of it, not the tip of it. So in order to do that, we need to install the crankshaft pulley first. Now, installing the crankshaft pulley is a pretty straightforward procedure, but the bolt for it is a torque to yield bolt. So we're going to use the old one in the washer to install it because it is press fit, and then we're going to swap it out for our new one so we can get that thing torqued down properly and it's going to hold. Now, because it is press fit, we're going to have to either use a threaded rod and press it onto there, or do what I do. You see the center ring on here? We're going to use that and a large socket, and we're just going to gently tap it onto there enough to the point where we can use the old bolt to draw it in, like the special tool, okay? So there's no special prep to this. There's no sealant required. We can just simply slide it onto there. There's no keyway. And it will hold initially like that, okay? And then what I do, like I said, is I just use the socket. So we're hitting on the socket. We're hitting it dead in the center. And we'll just do some, love taps. And then once it's on there far enough, we can use, again, the old bolt and washer. Make sure you get threaded on by hand. Good couple threads before it bottoms out. Okay, we're good to go. We're definitely gripping. And we'll use it to press it on the rest of the way. There we go, we're always set. And at this point, we can take it out. Now at this point, with the pulley fully seated onto the crankshaft, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our new bolt and our old washer, we're gonna put it on there, we're gonna torque it down to 89 foot-pounds. And then we're gonna back it off one full turn, so it's loose again. And then we're going to torque it back down to 37 foot-pounds. Once it's at that point, we're going to turn it an additional 90 degrees. That's our torque to yield that we're going to be stretching the bolt on here. And that'll set it into place. All right, now with the crankshaft pulley installed, we can now turn the crankshaft clockwise as needed to line up the high pressure pump, cam lobe, base circle facing up. I'm going to show you in detail how to get it to that point on there. Just bear with me, it's going to be a little bit shaky, but I'm going to explain it as we go. So right now it looks like the base circle is over here, and we're starting one of the flats, which is the ramp going up to the nose. So what you need to do is find the nose of the cam shaft. And you see right here how it's got real broad all the way across with the light. If you stick your finger down there, you'll notice it's flat, okay? That is one of the ramps coming up to the nose. Now the nose is gonna be a little bit harder to see. It's one of those things you gotta stick your finger down there. We just came up to the nose, okay? And the way you identify this is you see that flat, you kind of feel the nose, and then on the other side, we're gonna see another flat, okay? It's gonna be very obvious, especially if a camera is set up like this, and you can see down in there, it's gonna be just like this. You'll see it's flat, and the light goes all the way across. There you go. So then, we just need to continue until we get to the rounded portion, which is 180 from the nose, and that's our base circle. Once you get so far, you wanna kind of feel it. I still feel the flat right here, and right here, we're starting base circle. And this just makes it easier to install the roller tappet and the high pressure pump. Right about here. Again, stick your finger down in there, you'll feel, yep, we are at base circle. I'm gonna give it a little bit more. A little more. Yep, we're at base circle at this point, okay? Now is the time to start installing the high pressure pump. Now once the cam lobe down inside of there is at base circle facing up, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to take our new gasket. It does have a notch right here. You'll see it in the valve cover. Just line it up and just kind of make sure it goes in there right. All the way through. It's a nice tight fit. Get it in there. And then we'll start mounting up the high pressure pump. All right, looks good. Okay, now with the seal installed, we're just gonna squirt some oil down in the bore here, some 530, wipe it around the bore, and then we're gonna install our roller tappet. Now one side right here you see has a notch to it, an indent I guess you could say, and then this one it sticks out. Where it sticks out, you want to line it up with the notch up top here. It only goes in there one way. And once you get it aligned, it'll just fall right in like that. Now at this point, we're going to take the high pressure pump and the plate that we cleaned up earlier, okay? We're going to put them together, and then we're going to lay them down together onto the mounting boss right there. Now remember, you need to make sure you're using new bolts from Ford because these are torque to yield. All right, then we're going to take our mounting plate. We're going to line it up with the notches. You see how it just falls right into place like that. And then we also need to line it up back here with our bolt hole. We're just going to tighten this by hand so we can get it in there and aligned. We're just going to tighten it till it touches the plate there, just so it's all aligned on there. Then we're going to take our high pressure pump, we're going to put it into place, get it around the fitting here. We're going to install our new bolts. And get them through there. One on each side. We'll get them threaded in by hand. And then we're going to tighten them down evenly. Okay, so let's go ahead and snug these down. Again, you want to do it evenly, little lines each side at a time. And that will bring all these pieces together. Now don't tighten them too tight once it bottoms out because we do have to torque these in place. This will bring everything together nice and even. Right now, what we're doing is we're compressing the gasket, but we're also compressing that that spring on the high pressure pump. It's a process, but you want to do it right, nice and even. All right, right now they're, pretty much bottoming out, and we're going to start to torque them. Okay, good to go. All right, now we're going to torque these down to 177 inch-pounds. And you may want to do this in alternating pattern also, because this one's squishing down the rest of the way on the spring and gasket. Alright, we're torqued, and we're torqued. I always check these again. Okay, now once they're both torqued to 177 inch-pounds, we're going to turn them an additional 45 degrees. Now the easy way to do this is to make it as best you can straight, okay, and then just half of a 90. Oh yeah, it's gonna be tight. Right there, half of a 90, okay. So at that point, these are torqued down. We can finish tightening down that T30 back here for the mounting plate. Get snug. And then you're going to torque the T30 down to 89 inch-pounds. All right, now there is a special procedure for tightening this flare nut right here onto the high pressure pump. What we're gonna do is we're gonna flip this back down onto the valve cover while it's loose still. We're gonna put our new, how critical is it really, but I got them, nut that holds the bracket. Got that on, just have it on there loose, ready to go. Get these guys out of the way. We're gonna pull back the nut on here, and we're gonna squirt some 530 on there, on the threads, like Ford says. And we're gonna pretty much line that up on there. It's gonna be pretty rigid on there, but yours will go into place. So we'll go ahead and get it basically lined up. Start snugging our nut down, and that will help bring it in and line up perfectly for us. And you'll feel it moving over and over and over as you tighten here. I like to do it by hand and get a good feel for it. And while we're here, let's not forget this. Plug your connector in for that control valve on there. So that's done too. Okay, let's make sure we tighten this. Now we're gonna tighten this down. Okay, we're gonna tighten this down to 133 inch-pounds. And then we're gonna tighten it down an additional 30 degrees or 37 foot-pounds. Okay, and that will help seat it and even deform it onto the fitting of the high pressure pump. So it's a leak-free fitting. Now for me, because I'm using a small torque wrench like this and the crow's foot is at 90 degrees, there's no change to the torque spec. But if you start adding add-ons or extensions to it, you are going to change the torque value. So you want to calculate that loss or gain. Whereas for something like this, because it's so small, 133, and that's it. So we'll be able to get in here and torque it to that. Keep it at that 90. Okay, we're at 133 inch-pounds. Now once that is set, you can come down here to your nut and torque that down to 71 inch-pounds. All right, let's finish it up by connecting, our low pressure feed to the high pressure pump. Make sure it's nice and clean here. And then we're going to lift up on this lock so we get it out of the way. And we're gonna wiggle a little bit and center it, and we'll get it on there. Should, basically go right on there. So be very careful with it. You don't want to tear the O-rings. Really gotta make sure this guy is out of the way, like so. There we go, we're past. Now you can push it through and then lock it. And then we're good to go. That's good to go. Connector's good to go. All right, let's take care of the alternator. Let's get that back into place in the ears down here and the holes lined up so you can get this long bolt through. Kind of wiggle a little bit and it'll come right through on the other side. You'll be able to get it splined in by hand. And then up here, flip it over and we're gonna get this stud in and torque it down to 71 inch-pounds. Now once that's in place, everything's sitting here free, we're gonna put this bracket back on, slip it over the stud, over this one, and then we're gonna torque down the nut and the bolt on the alternator 35 foot-pounds. While we're here, now is also a good time to pull the oil filter out and change it out for startup. All right, now before we even think about adding anything else up top here with water pumps and crossovers to block our view, let's get this weirdo stretchy belt back on. Now this is the official Ford procedure. Don't laugh. This is it. This is how it gets installed in the 3.5, 3.7, and the 5.0. So we're going to pull it all the way around the AC compressor pulley in place like usual. And then we're going to go behind the crankshaft pulley so there's enough slack. We're going to bring it up and around. And we're going to be facing the ribs this way, of course, so we can walk it on. And we're going to zip tie it onto here. Yes, through one of the spokes in the crankshaft pulley. Then we're simply going to turn it clockwise and walk it on. This, in theory, should work. And by the time we get to the 6 o'clock position down below, or earlier, it should walk itself on. Ooh, there she goes. Where's it at? It's at 6 right now. A little bit more. Feel it in the groove all the way around. On this side, of course, it was already in there. Good to go. There you go. Hopefully you guys saw that, because I'm not doing it again. That went very, very smooth. So at this point, of course, cut her off. Okay. And then feel it all the way around. Make sure it's fully in the groove, nice and flat. Over here, over there. And that monstrosity is installed. Now let's concentrate on the coolant pump and all these crossovers up front here and build this up. We can go from there. We're almost there, guys. All right, now for water pump installation. We cleaned it up earlier. We lubricated this O-ring. We have our new gasket. It just pushes into place. 2 different points on here, and it will hold it for us while we're installing it on the front cover. So we'll simply line it up on here. Get it worked on. There we go. And we'll start getting a few bolts in there to align it. There we go. Okay. Make sure you work these in. Good couple threads all the way around. And that way nothing gets cross-threaded. We're so close, you don't want to cause problems now. Now, there is a torque sequence to this, of course, but we're also going to tighten it in 2 stages. We're going to tighten it to 89 inch-pounds, and then we're going to tighten it an additional 45 degrees in sequence once again. Again, all these documents will be down below in the video description, so you guys can print them out and follow along. All right, now it's finally time for our thermostat housing. So this is all cleaned up, new gaskets ready to go. We have our O-ring here lubricated and replaced. So it simply just falls into place. We're gonna push it on over here, with a little wiggle motion. Get it past the O-ring, it's gonna be nice and tight. There we go. And then we can simply find all these holes and start installing our bolts. Now, just like everything else in this engine, there's a torque sequence. You want to torque them down to 71 inch-pounds in sequence, and then go back and tighten them an additional 45 degrees. All right, so at this point, all the critical components up front here, and the valve covers, front cover, all that good stuff is torqued down to spec. You can start adding on all these different pipes and connections and hoses as needed, putting it back together. It's all pretty simple. It's the same way we took it off. The last thing we need to torque down, and that's critical, is the intake manifold. So you just want to clean your surfaces, make sure your ports are clean, and then torque it down to spec and sequence. Again, I'll have it listed down below. Print it out, lay it next to it, and do it right. All right, now after the intake is torqued down, of course, it's just a bunch of little hoses and connections and stuff like that all over the place. Same stuff we took off earlier, and it's back together pretty much. You also want to put the drain plug in down below in the oil pan and fill it with 6 quarts of 5W30, and then we're going to fill the cooling system back up with a 50-50 mixture of oat coolant. Now, you don't want to get in the vehicle and just fire it up. You want to crank the engine without it firing so we can listen to it, make sure it sounds okay, but also so we can get some splash lubrication going on, and of course fill all the oil circuits inside of there so it's primed for startup. The way you do that is you come into your fuse box here, you find fuse 27, okay, which is right here, and we're going to pull that out. It's 20 amp yellow. Just leave it there. Okay, you just need some needle nose pliers. And we're gonna go and we're gonna crank the engine until the oil pressure gauge comes up. That way we know there's enough oil pressure and splash lubrication going on and it's ready to fire. Now this procedure looks a little something like this. Go ahead, put your key in and just flick it like usual until you see your oil pressure go up like that. Now for me, it took about 3 times and then it was primed and ready to go. As you can see there, plenty of pressure and we're ready to start. And plus the engine, we got to listen to it at low RPM and we heard it has a nice constant crank, which means our compression and our timing is good to go. Let's go put that fuse back on and fire this baby. All right, now once the fuel pump fuse 27 is back into the battery junction box, you want to come into the vehicle, turn the key to the on position, and let the fuel pump prime for its 2-second prime. Oh, I don't know, 3-4 times. All right, let's fire it up. Oh, it runs so freaking smooth. Now, don't get too excited and let it run and go check it out. You want to turn it off and you want to go check that oil level. Make sure it's okay. All right, we started it up. It sounded good, it felt good. We just checked and adjusted our oil level. We're of course going to have to watch the coolant level as it warms up and starts to flow. But back here at that high pressure pump, you want to check your high pressure line coming out of there. Make sure it has no fuel leaks because we did reuse it and we did torque it down to spec. Want to make sure it's all good to go before the engine gets hot. Besides that, quick check over, we can let it run and adjust our coolant level.